while King Herod's soldiers were sharpening their swords and polishing their armor for a mission of cold-blooded murder, a humble carpenter was jolted awake in the dead of night by a terrifying divine warning. The most powerful ruler in the land had issued a secret death warrant, and the target was a baby who couldn't even walk yet. This wasn't just a move to a new city. It was a desperate 400-mile race for survival across scorching deserts and lawless borders. This is the story of the escape to Egypt, the night the Savior became a refugee, the shadow of Bethlehem. The atmosphere in Bethlehem had shifted from one of celestial wonder to one of suffocating dread. The Magi, those mysterious travelers from the east, had vanished. They didn't return to Jerusalem to give Herod the coordinates of the new king. In the royal palace, Herod's silence was more dangerous than his shouting. He felt mocked, outmaneuvered, and his response was to be absolute. In a small, quiet house, Joseph, Mary, and the infant Jesus were finally settling after the chaos of the census and the birth. They had no idea that they were currently the center of a cosmic and political storm. They had no guards, no walls, and no weapons. They only had a dream. Second, the angelic intervention. The Bible tells us that an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. The message was urgent, blunt, and left no room for delay. Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Joseph didn't wait for sunrise. He didn't pack a caravan or say goodbye to neighbors. In the ancient world, traveling at night was suicide. Thieves and predators owned the dark. But Joseph knew that a human king was far more dangerous than any desert wolf. He woke Mary, bundled the child, and left under the cover of shadows. 3. The brutal reality of the road. The journey from Bethlehem to the border of Egypt was roughly 40 miles, but the total trip to a safe city like Alexandria or Heliopolis would be nearly 400 miles. Imagine the scene. The terrain. They had to cross the Way of the Sea, or the rugged wilderness of the Sinai Peninsula. It was a land of shifting sands, extreme heat by day, and freezing cold by night. The refugee status, they were walking away from their culture, their language, and their family support. They were going into a land that had historically been the enemy of their people. The burden, Mary was likely still recovering from childbirth. Joseph was carrying their meager belongings and tools. And they were carrying the hope of the world in their arms, knowing that if they tripped or were caught, history would change forever. The bloodshed behind them. As Joseph's small family disappeared into the desert, the horror they escaped began. Herod's soldiers arrived in Bethlehem. There was no trial, no investigation, just the sound of steel. The massacre of the innocents remains one of history's most heartbreaking events. Herod ordered the death of every male child 2 years old and under. He believed that by casting a wide net of blood, he would surely catch the one boy who threatened his crown. The wailing and great mourning of the mothers of Bethlehem echoed the prophecy of Jeremiah. Herod thought he had won. He sat in his palace, satisfied that the king of the Jews was no more. He had no idea his target was already breathing the dry air of the Egyptian frontier. The life in the land of the pharaohs. Why Egypt? Historically, Egypt was outside Herod's jurisdiction, but still under Roman influence, making it a safe haven with a large Jewish population. It was also a beautiful irony. Centuries earlier, God had called his people out of Egypt to save them from slavery. Now, he was calling his son into Egypt to save him from a king. For roughly 2 to 3 years, the Holy Family lived as immigrants. Joseph likely worked as a tekton, carpenter-builder, in a local village. This period of Jesus' life is often called the silent years. He grew up hearing the sounds of a foreign tongue, perhaps playing in the shadow of ancient monuments, while his true identity remained a hidden secret. The death of a tyrant. Power is a fleeting thing. While Jesus was growing strong in Egypt, Herod was rotting away. Historical records from Josephus describe Herod's final days as agonizing. His body was consumed by disease, and his mind was consumed by even more madness. When Herod finally died in 4 BC, the angel returned to Joseph in Egypt. Arise, go into the land of Israel. for those who sought the young child's life are dead. Joseph, ever the protector, didn't return to the region ruled by Herod's son, Archelaus, who was just as cruel as his father. Instead, they moved north to the humble, nobody's-live-here town of Nazareth. The significance. Why this story matters today. The escape to Egypt is more than just a narrow miss with a villain. It's a story of providence versus politics. The failure of force. Herod had all the soldiers, but God had the plan. No matter how much power a human leader claims, they cannot stop a divine purpose. The refugee king. It is a powerful thought that the central figure of Christianity spent his toddler years as a displaced person, a foreigner in a strange land. It shows a God who understands the struggle of the marginalized. The fulfillment of history. It fulfilled the ancient words, "Out of Egypt I called my son." Conclusion. The empty throne. King Herod spent his life building monuments to himself so he would never be forgotten. He killed children to keep a chair he could only sit in for a few years. Today, Herod's palaces are ruins for tourists to photograph. But the child who fled on a donkey in the middle of the night, his name is spoken in every corner of the globe. The escape to Egypt wasn't a retreat. It was the strategic preservation of a kingdom that would eventually outlast the Roman Empire and every other empire that would ever rise. Herod feared a king who would take his crown. He should have feared a king who would conquer death itself. Follow-up question. Would you like me to generate a cinematic image of Joseph and Mary crossing the desert under the stars for this story?